Hello and welcome to the J Sports NFL show. I am your host, Joshua Nowakowski. Happy to be here with you today. The divisional round has wrapped up as all four games has concluded, and I'm recording this game right after the national championship college football game that saw the Ohio State Buckeyes crowned as national champions. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Today, I will be recapping all four divisional games and see where these games were won, see where these games were lost. And I will be going over my keys to victory that I had earlier in the week in my last episode if you tuned in for that show, and see how those played out on the field. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, I am sure you see that the camera quality is much improved. Those adapters came in, so I have the camera, I have the mic. I messed around with the mic a little bit, made sure everything's plugged in, so hopefully I'm not cutting in and out as much. I'll take a look after recording. Hopefully I sound a lot better, but thank you guys all for the feedback. I do appreciate it. And before we continue, just a reminder, if you haven't already, follow me on all social media so you know when episodes come out. They are all linked down below. That's going to be my Instagram, my YouTube, my Twitter, and I believe that's it on social medias. I think that we have everything covered except for the games that played out over the weekend. So let's get straight on into our first recap, which was on Saturday afternoon in Arrowhead with the Chiefs taking on the Houston Texans. Now, this game started with an absolute bang as the Chiefs almost ran the opening kickoff all the way back for a touchdown, but they were stopped at the 26-yard line, but giving Patrick Mahomes a short field to play with. The Texans defense did come to play, and they came up with a huge stop early on and held Kansas City to a field goal. Houston, on their first possession, was also able to get some points, knocking down a field goal as well, keeping that game tied with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, after a couple of big plays, as Patrick Mahomes hit Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy on 20-plus yard plays, but again were stopped in goal-to-go situation and had to settle for another Harrison Butker field goal. So early on, this Houston defense really stepped up and was making stops when they needed to early on. And the Chiefs took a 6-3 lead into the second quarter. And the Texans, they were able to put up a nice drive, but unfortunately, a C.J. Stroud fumble set up a super long 55-yard field goal that really never had a chance from Kaimi Fairbairn. The weather conditions were not in his favor, but that kick wasn't even close. Now, the Chiefs, again, took advantage of that excellent field position that they were given, and they were able to finish off this drive with a Kareem Hunt 1-yard touchdown. Now, the Texans, they needed points. It was a crucial spot because we're getting near halftime. They're currently down 13-3, and they were able to get those points off the leg of Kaimi Fairbairn, who this time was able to knock in the field goal right before halftime, giving the Chiefs a 13-6 lead in the half. Texans, however, started out with the ball in the third quarter, and C.J. Stroud led a 17-play drive that went just over 10 minutes long, and it ended with a Joe Mixon punching it in from 13 yards out, and all of a sudden, Houston is an extra point away from tying the game. However, the kicking woes would continue as Fairbairn misses the extra point, so it's 13-12 Chiefs, and that would be the same score heading into the fourth quarter. Now, that Chiefs drive after Houston scored went into the fourth quarter, and they went 14 plays, and that was ended in a 11-yard Travis Kelce touchdown. And then the Chiefs defense really stepped up and made life hard on quarterback C.J. Stroud and the Texans as they were not able to move the ball much at all. They were forced to punt. They had a turnover on downs. And that led to another Harrison Butker field goal, which made it a 23-12 game. Now, the Texans were able to get down the field, even though C.J. Stroud got sacked 4 times on the drive, 2 of those sacks by George Karlaftis. The Texans line up for a crucial 35-yard field goal to keep them in the game, to still give them a chance, and that kick was blocked by the former Texan, Justin Reed. So the Chiefs would then have Matt Araiza run all the way back for a safety with just a couple of seconds left. But that was basically it. That was the game. And the Chiefs would win this game by a score of 23-14. Now, Patrick Mahomes had a quiet but had a good game, going 16 of 25, 177 yards, threw for that 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce led the way in receiving, going with 117 yards and a touchdown. He came up big in this game, and like I said during the preview, he is Mahomes' go-to guy. Now, on the other side of the ball, C.J. Stroud went 19 for 28, 245 yards. Joe Mixon had just over 80 yards on the ground, and Stroud was able to spread that ball around to multiple receivers. Now, the O-line for Houston was not able to hold up, and Stroud was sacked 8 times in the game. 3 of those sacks by George Karlaftis. He was an absolute monster, an absolute menace on the field, and was getting to C.J. Stroud quite often. And this was not that same Texans O-line that we saw against the Chargers. Now, the Texans, this is going to hurt Texans fans when you think about this. The Texans had more first downs, had a better third down conversion percentage, had more rushing yards, had more passing yards, had more total yards, had longer time of possession, but they still came up short in that game. They had opportunities. The opportunity was there for the Texans to win this game, but you miss 2 field goals, you miss an extra point, and that proved costly for Houston as they get sent home. Now, what were my keys for this game? For Houston, it was try and steal a possession / give their offense good starting field position. Now, that didn't exactly play out on the field. Now, even though the Texans defense did step up when they needed to and they made big plays, those big plays were typically in the red zone, holding Kansas City to field goals instead of touchdowns. It wasn't, they didn't cause any turnovers at all, and Houston's best starting field position the entire game was on their own 34-yard line. So the Texans defense, while they stepped up and played well, they weren't able to create any turnovers, and they weren't able to, pin the Chiefs back far enough where they could give their offense really good starting field position. Now, even though Houston was able to sustain some good long drives, they also had a lot of drives, especially in that second half, and especially in that fourth quarter, that ended up stalling out. Now, my key to victory for the Kansas City Chiefs was to protect Patrick Mahomes and for him to throw the ball quickly, to throw it out quickly. Chiefs were very successful in doing this. Mahomes only sacked 3 times all game compared to C.J. Stroud's 8 sacks, and he was able to deliver the ball very quickly during the game, and that opened up the middle of the field where we saw those big plays from Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce. So the Chiefs had a good game plan of, hey, let's throw these quick passes, then the defense might, sag, they might become a little bit aggressive. That's where we can hit down the middle. And that's exactly what the Chiefs were able to do, as those big plays for the Chiefs were down the middle of the field. Now, I also gave you guys a prize pick square for the game as well. So I want to go over that, because we got to recap everything that I said in my preview episode, right? So my prize pick square for this game was Patrick Mahomes to throw over 250.5 yards. And that one didn't really even come close, as he ended the game, like I said earlier, with 177. Now, the Chiefs played well enough. Their defense came up when they needed to. They scored enough points, and they secure the first spot in the AFC Championship game. So, there's our first recap, but that wasn't our only game Saturday. We move into Saturday evening, and we had our matchup between the Washington Commanders and our Detroit Lions on Saturday night. Now, after a huge defensive stop on 4th and 1, the Lions offense drove right down the field and struck first with the Jahmyr Gibbs 1-yard rushing touchdown. However, Commanders showed that they mean business and they were here to play, and they would respond with a nice drive that would end in some points, kicking a field goal. So, Detroit was on the brink of scoring again. They're on the brink of the red zone, but a Jared Goff fumble. And we're going to be talking about Jared Goff a lot in this recap. But Jared Goff fumbles, it's recovered by Frankie Louvu, and it gave Washington the ball back, and they turned that turnover into points. As a huge catch by Dyami Brown leads to a Brian Robinson Jr. rushing touchdown, and boom, just like that, the Commanders have the 10-7 lead. However, Lions, they would respond quickly, as just 3 minutes later, Jared Goff would find Sam Laporta in the back of the end zone as he makes an incredible one-hand grab. That was an unbelievable catch. Jared Goff able to extend the play, finds Laporta in the back of the end zone, and just that ball stuck to his hand like glue. A great one-handed grab to secure the touchdown for Sam Laporta. And this is where the game started going back and forth and back and forth. And it was Washington's turn for a quick score, as on only the third play of the drive, Terry McLaurin broke a couple of tackles and boom, off to the races as he goes 58 yards for a touchdown, giving the lead back to Washington again. Are you keeping up? Because we're still not done in the second quarter. The Lions were looking for a response, but instead, Jared Goff, another mistake. Jared Goff, interception that turned into a pick six by Quan Martin. So a huge turning point in that game was that pick six, and Washington extended their lead. Now on the play, Goff was injured, so when the offense comes back out, who's the quarterback? None other than Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Two Gloves got some playoff snaps and was leading the offense. Now, after a couple quick plays, the Lions ran a trick reverse run that saw Jamison Williams find some room to run, and with his speed, good luck catching up to him, good luck tackling him, as he went 61 yards for a much-needed Lions touchdown, and just like that, they were right back into the game. But again, this connection where we're going to hear it a couple of times. Another deep pass caught by Brown. Jaden Daniels then finds Zach Ertz in the back of the end zone. Another touchdown for the Washington Commanders, and this offense was clicking all night long. Jared Goff then got the ball back. He was back in the game. Was evaluated, I believe it was for a concussion, but he came back out fairly quickly. He was actually on the sideline with his helmet on before the Jamison Williams touchdown, so it was expected he was going to be coming back in for the next series, which he did, and he's driving down the field towards the end of the half. They're already in field goal range, looking to secure points, and instead, absolutely brutal interception, his second interception of the quarter. This time the interception was by Mike Sanristel. I'm so sorry if I butchered that name, but he is a Michigan native against the Detroit Lions. I'm sure that had to feel good for him, as his Commanders took a 31-21 lead into the half. That's right. That was all in the first half. You would have thought that was the entire recap, right? Just the first half. 52 points scored. Absolutely insane, entertaining first half. I mean, I know I was watching the game, and And it just seemed like every time anyone touched the ball, they had a chance to break it, had a chance to just break a couple tackles, take it to the house. It was such an entertaining half of football, but and just an absolute back and forth that was epic by both teams. So on to the second half, where the Lions were able to put up a 12-play drive going 91 yards that would end in Jahmyr Gibbs' another rushing touchdown. And once again, it's a one-score game, 28-31. You're thinking, wow, even with the turnovers, 2 interceptions and a fumble, Lions are still in this game. But their defense could not get a stop. Washington responded just like they had all game long with a 15-play drive that took a lot of much-needed time off the clock and ended in Brian Robinson Jr. getting his second touchdown of the game. Now, the Lions needed points, and Dan Campbell tried to get a little cute, tried to run a trick play with Jamison Williams throwing the football. However, it was picked off by Mike again for his second interception of the game. And at that point, the Commanders were looking to put this game away as Jeremy McNichols adds a short rushing touchdown, and that put the game pretty much out of reach at that point. Now, the Lions would add a field goal from Jake Bates, get a defensive stop, but another red zone turnover proved to be the ending of the game for the Lions, as this time it was Jeremy Chin who picked off Jared Goff to secure the Washington Commanders' 45-31 victory. Absolutely insane game. I mean, Washington they came to play, and that defense, man, that defense in Washington, that was something to watch. 3 interceptions and a fumble recovery. They were flying all over the field. Even though they still gave up 31 points, didn't matter because their offense was clicking, hitting on all cylinders. As Jaden Daniels added another impressive game to his rookie campaign, throwing for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then 51 yards on the ground. Now, Diami Brown had himself a game as well. He led the way in receiving with 98 yards. And then Washington, they had 3 different rushers rush for 45 or more yards in the game. That was Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler. On the other side of the football, Jared Goff, he threw for over 300 yards, had that passing touchdown to Sam Laporta. But man, those 3 interceptions and fumble never set the Lions up for success. And especially when I believe it was when 2 of the interceptions and the fumble came in Commanders territory, and I know 2 of them were in the red zone as well. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs was impressive in the run game, over 100 rushing yards, 105 rushing yards to be exact, and also had 70 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown led the way with 137 yards receiving, but the turnovers just proved to be too much for Detroit as the defense wasn't able to get a stop at all against this Commanders offense. So how did my keys to the game play out in this one? Well, for Washington, I said they needed to stop the run game. And, well, let's say they didn't really do a great job at doing that, as they give up 201 yards on the ground. Now, it wasn't part of my keys, but I did say this pass defense was going to give Goff fits. They did exactly that. Causing 4 Goff turnovers that game. However, they were not able to stop the rushing game whatsoever. Luckily, they didn't need to because their offense was just unstoppable, to be frank. That offense was unstoppable. Now, Detroit's key to victory was stopping Jaden Daniels. And again, the defense did not do their part. Daniels threw for almost 300 yards. He wasn't sacked at all. during the game. 0 sacks registered by that Detroit defense. So he was able to connect on multiple big long plays with McLaurin, with Brown. He was able to be comfortable in the pocket. He was able to take his time. He was able to go through his progressions. And he just made the correct reads. He found open receivers. And when the pocket started to collapse, he would just take off and run. And the Lions couldn't stop him at all throughout the entire game. I mean, this kid, this Jaden Daniels, he's turning into a star right before our eyes. And it's electric to watch him on the football field. And I'm so excited that we get to watch more of him on the football field next weekend. Now, my prize picks for this game was Brian Robinson Jr. to go under 36.5 rushing yards. He surpassed that fairly quickly as the Lions' run defense was basically Swiss cheese. He ended the game with 77 rushing yards, adding in 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, I really thought this Lions' run defense was going to be better, but like I said, Swiss cheese. They didn't step up at all. The Commanders dominated this game in every facet, and they rightfully moved on to secure the first spot in the NFC Championship game. So now we move on to Sunday, and Sunday afternoon in Philly was our third game of the divisional round, and this time it was the Philadelphia Eagles facing off with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, both teams here would score on their very first drives, their opening possessions. First, it was Jalen Hurts, ran at 44 yards for a touchdown, and Matthew Stafford found Tyler Higbee for a short touchdown. However, on the Eagles' touchdown, Jake Elliott would miss the extra point, so the Rams had an early 7-6 lead. Now, as the first quarter was nearing the end, Saquon Barkley got loose, and this guy has electric speed. He took it 62 yards to the house, giving the Eagles their lead back as the quarter ended. Now, the Rams would kick a short field goal in the second quarter, and then we started seeing some snowfall. I'm sure as you guys are seeing these highlights roll, you're going to see later on in the game, you're going to say, are these highlights from the same football game from the first quarter? Yes, they are. That snow started coming down, and that would be all the scoring of the first half after that Rams field goal, as the Eagles took a 13-10 lead into the half. But the Rams were going to be starting with the ball in the second half, and a big catch by Cooper Kupp would help set up the Rams' game-tying field goal by rookie kicker Cardi, and the Eagles would respond with a field goal of their own on that next possession, taking the lead right back, making it 16-13. After a couple of short possessions, the Rams had a really good punt that set the Eagles inside of their own 5-yard line. And that's when defensive end Neville Gallimore was able to get to Jalen Hurts in the end zone for a safety. That's right. We had a playoff safety. I don't know how many of those have happened, but yeah, Gallimore able to get to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had, I know, at least one open receiver on the play, but I guess he didn't see him, wasn't in his progressions, wasn't looking towards him, and Gallimore gets him for the safety. Now, as the Rams got the ball back, they looked to take the lead as the fourth quarter approached, because after the safety, the Eagles kicked the ball to the Rams. However, a bad exchange between Matthew Stafford and Kyren Williams caused a fumble that was picked up by Isaiah Rodgers of the Eagles, and they were able to recover it and shift the momentum right back in Philly's direction. And then the Eagles were able to turn that turnover into crucial points as Jake Elliott knocked through a field goal, making the game 19-15 in the fourth quarter. Now the Rams get the ball back again, and yet again they turn the ball over. As this time Matthew Stafford was sacked by Zach Bond, the Pro Bowl All-Pro player this year, And the Eagles again set up in prime position to score. But again, Rams defense holds strong, holds them to a field goal. That gives the Eagles a 7-point lead. So Rams defense is stepping up. They're getting the stops, holding the Eagles to field goals. The Rams, however, just couldn't get anything going on offense at this point in the game. They have a quick 3 and out, and the ball goes right back to the Eagles. And what do the Eagles do with that ball? Hand it right off to Saquon Barkley. First play of the possession, hand off to Saquon, and for the second time, Saquon gets loose. This time he goes 78 yards for the touchdown, making it now a 2-possession game with under 5 minutes left. There wasn't much hope left in the Rams. However, Stafford led a very quick drive, put the team on his back, and drove down the field in the snow, and it ends with a Cody Parkinson touchdown. And just like that, Rams are right back in this game. They need a defensive stop, and the Rams were able to get that defensive stop and come up with a big sack by Kobe Turner on Jalen Hurts. They force Philly to punt the ball, and it gives the Rams the ball with a chance to win the game in over 2 minutes left. And this is when I thought, wow, the Rams really have a shot here, because Matthew Stafford finds Puka Nacua for a huge 37-yard catch that put the Rams just outside of the red zone. Now, this catch by Nacua was absolutely incredible. It's a great throw by Stafford, but the way Nacua adjusts to the ball and has the awareness in the snow that he still needs to get his feet down, he's able to drag his feet, get 2 feet in for a huge play. And this was the point where I was watching the game with my dad, and we both looked at each other, and we were like, ooh, Rams might win this game. Like, that Rams might win this game here. Now, however, on 3rd and 2, Jalen Carter comes, boom, flying through the offensive line. I mean, almost untouched. And sacks Matthew Stafford. That brings up a huge 4th down and 11 that the Rams were not able to convert, and Philly would hold on to win this game by a final score of 28-22. Now, Matthew Stafford threw the ball 44 times in the game. Again, most of it in the snow as well. He goes for 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Kyren Williams rushed for over 100 yards. But those 2 costly fumbles just proved to be too much for the Rams to overcome. Now, on the other side of the football, we had the Eagles offense that was led by Saquon Barkley, who broke the Eagles' single-game playoff rushing record with 205 rushing yards after 255 rushing yards against the Rams earlier this season. In this game, he also added 2 touchdowns. Now, again, Jalen Hurts, not much of a factor with his arm this game, only 128 passing yards. He was able to be effective early on in the run game with 70 yards rushing on the ground, most of that coming in the first half as he was sacked earlier in the game. He kind of tweaked his leg, his knee, it bent really weird. I was surprised he was okay to keep playing. Because that injury, like, as they were showing the slow-mo, I was like, oh my, like, geez, how is he okay? But he was able to stay in the game, but just wasn't much of a factor, because he couldn't really run the ball that well, and he wasn't able to really move the ball with his arm either that game. But luckily they were able to rely on Saquon Barkley, who just did everything for him and led this Eagles team to a victory on Sunday. Now, my keys to victory for the Rams was getting Cooper Kupp involved early and often. Now, Cooper Kupp wasn't featured that much early on in the game. However, later in the game, Stafford started to feed him a lot in the second half. Cooper Kupp ends the game with 61 yards on 5 catches. However, came up short in the end. Now, the Eagles did exactly what my key to victory was. My key to victory in that preview episode, I said, feed Saquon and rely on Saquon. They did it in their first matchup, and they did it again here, as again he goes for over 200 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. and both of those touchdowns were over 60 yards. He also caught 4 passes from Jalen Hurts. Out of his 15 completions, 4 of them went to Saquon Barkley. Now, this Eagles offense is they are tough to stop. And these last 2 games have been the perfect example of when the pass game isn't going, the rush game picks up the slack, right? Jalen Hurts hasn't looked great his last 2 games. Let's just be honest. He hasn't looked great. I know he's probably dealing with some injuries too, but he just hasn't looked great at all on the field. But you know who has looked great? Saquon. Saquon has looked excellent these last 2 games, and he looks to only be getting better as the season's going on. So it's going to be a tough task for Washington, but we're going to save that for next episode for my next show when we get into the previews. Now, it just shows this Eagles offense is just so dynamic on both sides of the football. Now, what was my prize picks for this game? It was Cooper Kupp over 41.5 receiving yards, and he did surpass that. It was a little scary going after the first half. I was like, feed Kupp the ball, Stafford. Feed him the ball. And he did find him on multiple occasions in the second half and ending with 61 yards. Now, the Eagles, while it wasn't pretty, they get the job done and they secure a date with the Washington Commanders next Sunday. And that leads us to our 4th and final game of the weekend, and that was Sunday afternoon in Buffalo between the Bills and the Ravens. Much like a lot of these other games, quick scores to start off the game. First, it was Lamar Jackson throwing a touchdown pass to Rashad Bateman. And then the Bills, on the other side, they quickly respond with their own touchdown with Ray Davis rushing it in for a touchdown. The following Ravens possession was very short-lived as Lamar Jackson threw an interception to Taylor Rapp, and the Bills were in Baltimore territory to start the possession. But the Ravens defense came up big, and the Bills weren't able to get any points off of that turnover. Now, in the second quarter, Lamar tried to elude the Bills' defense, but as he did, Damar Hamlin knocked the ball out of Lamar's hands, and it was picked up by Von Miller, and he almost ran it all the way back, but he gets deep into Baltimore territory, and this time, they were able to score off of the turnover, and it was a Josh Allen rushing touchdown. You cannot turn the ball over against this Bills defense, especially when you're giving their offense great field position. You know, they got lucky the first time, it didn't turn into points. Second time, not so lucky, as it turned into a touchdown. However, the Ravens would respond with a very strong drive, but they'd end up having to settle for a field goal, making it a 14-10 game. The Ravens defense was not able to slow down this Bills rushing game, and again, it's Josh Allen running his way into the end zone, giving the Bills a 21-10 lead at halftime. So, the Ravens need to score in the third. They need to get back in this game, and they did that. First with the Justin Tucker field goal, and then some big runs from Derrick Henry set up a 5-yard rushing touchdown from Henry. Then they decided to go for 2 to try and tie the game. However, they missed the 2-point attempt. But just like that, we're right back in this game. Ravens are right back in this game. It's 21-19 Bills. The Bills, it was their turn. They needed to respond in the fourth quarter. And they did that, not only offensively, but defensively as well. First, it's a Tyler Bass field goal to extend the lead. But after a deep Mark Andrews catch, he fumbles the football. It's knocked out and recovered by Terrell Bernard, and Buffalo again has the ball right around midfield. So, 3 Ravens turnovers, and they started in Ravens territory. They started in the red zone, and they started on the 50-yard line from those 3 turnovers. Now, the Bills again were able to turn the Ravens' mistakes into points. Tyler Bass making another field goal. So that extends it to an 8-point lead, and Lamar has just over 3 minutes, needing a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So on this possession, Lamar had a couple of big passes to Wallace, to Mark Andrews, and then he finds Isaiah Likely in the end zone, 24-yard touchdown with just over 90 seconds left. Ravens fans are going crazy. They're saying, yeah, let's go, let's tie this game up. And it all comes down to the 2-point conversion. And the Ravens got the play call right. They ran the right play. They got the right read. It was the correct play call by the Ravens offense. And Mark Andrews is wide open, kind of on this little short route. On his way to the end zone, he's kind of backpedaling as the ball is thrown. But Mark Andrews drops the ball. They had the tie game. It was right there. It was right there. It was in his hands. The ball was in his hands. Not a defender in sight. It was right in the breadbasket. But Andrews could not hold on to the football. So now the Ravens, they got to try an onside kick. And if you know anything about the NFL and onside kicks, since they changed the rule, it's very hard to already recover an onside kick, and they were not able to recover this onside kick. And then on the first play, handoff to Ty Johnson, boom, splits the D, runs it for a first down, and that secures the Bills' W by a score of 27-25. Bills win 27-25. So Lamar Jackson, he throws for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he has that 1 interception, and he has the 1 fumble, only had 39 rushing yards in that game. Those turnovers were crucial, and in the end result, Lamar will be thinking about those 2 turnovers for a while. You know, even though it came down to the 2-point conversion, he's going to be thinking about his mistakes that he made in that game. Isaiah Likely led the way receiving with 73 yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry held under 100 yards. He was held under 100 yards rushing on the ground with only 84 yards. Now Josh Allen, he didn't have any turnovers. He only threw for 127 yards and only had 20 rushing yards, but he had those 2 rushing touchdowns. Khalil Shakir, he led the way receiving with 67 yards, and James Cook added 67 yards on the ground. So while this Bills offense wasn't explosive, they didn't have a ton of big plays, it didn't need to be. They didn't need to be explosive because their defense came to play and put their offense in great positions to succeed by giving them excellent field position multiple times. And that is why Buffalo won this game. Now for Baltimore, I said that their key to victory was which receiver would step up, right? I said even if Zay Flowers plays, he's not going to be 100%. You need someone to step up. Who's going to step up? And they needed someone to step up. I said there was going to be a big moment late in the game where Lamar's going to need to find someone to rely on. And when Lamar needed Andrews to step up, unfortunately, he didn't. As a crucial fumble and the drop on the 2-point conversion, those are 2 huge plays. And those 2 plays are probably why the Ravens aren't moving on. In my honest opinion, those 2 plays are probably why the Ravens aren't moving on. Now for the Bills, I said their key to victory was hold Lamar and Henry under 150 rushing yards. My goodness, they did exactly that. Henry and Lamar combined for 123 rushing yards. Holding Henry under 100 is quite an impressive feat. Now kudos to the Bills for stepping up and playing great defense all game. And they were able to stop this Ravens very potent rushing offense. The Bills were up to task and they stopped this Ravens rushing attack. Now my prize picks was unfortunately Josh Allen over 44.5 rushing yards, and he only went for 20 rushing yards on 10 carries. Now, The Bills set up the rematch with the familiar foe as they will play the Chiefs next Sunday in the AFC Championship game. So, that is all for the divisional round recap. I went 2 for 4 this weekend in my game picks, bringing me to 6 out of 10 for the playoffs so far. Now, my prize picks entry went only 1 of 4, and we will look to improve on that next weekend. However, I did say today was the national championship game. I did hit a nice little wager today during the national championship game, looking right up here, winning $90. So, I kind of know what I'm doing. Hopefully, I can be better in the championship round for the NFL and steer you guys in the right direction. Now, I want to thank you all so much for tuning into today's show. And do not forget, tell your friends about this show. Let them know about this show so they can tune in as well. Be sure to like, be sure to comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on all social medias. Comment, your thoughts on the games, things like that. I want to hear from you guys. Now, be on the lookout for that preview episode coming out on Saturday for the championship round in the NFL. Thank you all so much for listening to the J Sports NFL show once again. Until next time, this is Joshua Nowakowski saying have a great day and see you next time. Goodbye.